If you have any pain in your body, chances are it could be coming from your hips. Here's an easy hip assessment that will show you where you can improve. Coach Zach here, and in this video, we're going to be going over an easy and simple assessment that will show you how your hips are performing. We're going to be doing an overhead squat. So we're not only going to be seeing how your hips are performing, but it's also going to tell us where is your restriction that's not allowing you to get into a deep squat. Because for many of us, it could be in our thoracic spine, our ankles, and any other areas in our body, and this assessment will show you what you need to improve. This assessment comes from the functional movement screen. It's just one of the movements of many, but it's going to give us a good idea of how your body is moving through a deep squat. To help me out with showing you how this assessment's done, I'm going to invite my good friend, Coach Chris. We all know Coach Chris here at the compound. So he's going to show us how his squat is doing. So what you're going to need for this assessment is you're going to need a stick, a pole, a PVC pipe, maybe even a broomstick if you have nothing. We want to do it without our shoes on to really get a full idea of how we're squatting. So Chris, go ahead and take that stick. I want you to place that stick directly over your head. We want to look at the arms being at 90 degrees, so a straight line from the wrist down to the elbow. When you look down at the feet, we want the feet directly under the hips, toes point forward. Now for some of us, you might need to point your toes slightly out. That's fine as long as it's not too much, right? Getting in the deep squat can be tricky with straight toes for a lot of us. So from here, I want you to extend your arms straight up. Now, at your own pace, I want you to come down into the deepest squat you can. Pause at the bottom. Good. And then come back up. So there's many things you want to look for here. Go ahead and come back down into the squat. We want to make sure the knees are tracking over the ankles. They're not collapsing in. Go ahead and show us what it looks like when your knees are collapsing in. That right there is a no-go. We want the knees directly over the ankles. Come on up. Good. Go ahead and come back down into the squat. A big restriction for most people in the squat is actually the ankles. Chris here doesn't have that problem for the most part. He's pretty good in a squat, but then come on back up. But for most people, when they have difficulty with this position, we want to elevate the heels, take the ankles out of the equation to see how that squat responds. So go ahead and elevate your heels. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You can use some plates, you can use a mat, about 1.5 inches. Same position, and then come down into the squat. As you can see, much deeper, much better, much more control. He's not straining to hold this. This would indicate that he has some things going on with his ankles that by improving ankle mobility, he'll be more comfortable in this deep squat. Come back up. Good. So before I show you the side view of Chris, when looking at it from the front view, the main thing that you're looking for is the knees tracking over the ankles. All right, I can't stress that enough. When going into a squat and coming out, you want the knees over the ankles. No collapsing in and no driving out excessively. Right? A lot of times people have restrictions in their squat completely due to their ankles. So if you can't get into a squat comfortably, elevate the ankles and see how that changes. If it's easier for you, then you got to work on your ankle mobility. So now looking at this squat from the side is going to give us a bigger picture of what's really going on at the hips and the thoracic spine. Now, if you're doing this by yourself, you might want to use a tripod or put your camera on something to film yourself from the front and from the side, or you can have someone else watch you and film, but you want to have an idea of what you're looking at when doing this yourself. So same thing, feet under hips, toes forward, or maybe a little bit of external rotation, stick over the head, make sure 90 degrees, and then extend. And then from here, come down into a deep squat, as deep as you can go. And as you can see from the side, we're looking for the stick to remain over his head. Come back up. Because it's not over his head, that means that his restriction is coming from his thoracic spine. Right? So far we've unlocked ankles and thoracic spine. Chris has been doing a lot of work on his hips. So far the results we're seeing is that his hips are actually not that bad. Go back into a squat. You see he's be able to come down into a squat. Look at the butt wink. He's got a little bit of butt wink. What butt wink means is that means a little bit of a tilting the tailbone down, but it's not happening early. Come on up. What we're looking for in the hips is if that butt wink, when that tailbone tucks, we want it to happen at or around parallel with the knees. Right? So if you're coming down and your butt's winking while you're up here, that's a big restriction in the hips. Go ahead and come back down into that squat. You see it's not winking until he's right around parallel. So that means that his hips are functioning pretty well. But notice the stick, not over the head. Come back up. Now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to elevate the heels, see if that changes how it's looking. Again, looking. Much deeper in the squat, stick is able to remain over the head, which means that his ankles could be the root cause of any restriction in his squat. Come on up. We'll do one more, really paying attention to that butt wink. So coming back down, if you notice, he's fine, he's fine. It's not really tilting forward until he's below parallel. So for Chris, I would say work on his thoracic spine, work on his ankle mobility, but his hips are looking pretty good. Come on up. So again, to recap from the side, what we're looking for the butt wink. We don't want it to be too early. We want it to happen at or around parallel. And we're looking for the stick to remain over his head to indicate how his thoracic extension mobility is doing. From the front, we're looking more at the knees and the ankles. So what have we learned from this overhead squat assessment? Well, we learned that there's 3 main areas that could be restricting you from going down into a deep squat. It could be your ankles, could be your hips, which involve your knees, could also be your thoracic mobility. And the way that this assessment is scored is that you have a high score of 3 and a low score of 0. If at any point you experience any kind of pain through that movement, you're automatically at a 0. If you could do that overhead squat with the stick remaining over your head, while the knees are tracking over your toes, without that butt wink coming before your legs are parallel, you got a 3. If you had to elevate your heels on anything to allow yourself to come into that squat, that's a 2. And if you had to elevate your heels, but still were not able to keep that stick overhead, or your knees were still collapsing, or it just didn't feel comfortable, you had pain, that's a 1. Assessing the way your body moves is just the first step. Where do you go from here? Well, if you discovered that you have hip restrictions, then you're going to want to unlock your hips and increase your hip mobility. So go ahead and check out that pinned comment down below for a 10-minute routine that will help you unlock your hips. I mean, come on, we all got 10 minutes to help improve the way that we feel, and unlocking your hips is a great place to start. As always, I'm Coach Zach with Team Criticalbench, and I'll see you next time. Yeah.